We are going to get started. If everyone could take a seat, please. Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Hall, president of the Women's Congressional Policy Institute, or WCPI. Welcome to our Capitol Hill lunch briefing, The STEM Gap, Remaining Challenges to Women's Full Participation. For 20 years, we have hosted an annual STEM event to raise visibility around the continuing gap for women in many STEM professions, although certainly progress has been made. And as most of you know, WCPI is a nonpartisan, nonprofit public policy organization whose mission is to bring together a community of bipartisan women policymakers and trusted partners to advance issues of importance to women, develop the next generation of women leaders, and foster a more effective and representative democracy. And we work very closely with the members and staff of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus, and some of them are here, and I'll be introducing them in just a minute. Today, we will be hearing from a very distinguished panel of speakers, including Camille, Chang, Gilmore, Marlene Martez, and Alexis McKittrick. Each of them brings a different perspective to this important discussion, and we thank them for participating. Our special thanks to Amazon for their support for this briefing. We appreciate their longstanding commitment to expanding the recruitment and retention of women in STEM careers and their work to bridge the gender divide within STEM fields through mentorships, school summer programs, and so much more. And I particularly would like to thank Kasia Witkowski, who is here with us. She serves on our board of directors. Kasia. I would also like to thank our congressional briefing co-sponsors, the leadership of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus, Congresswoman Kat Camille and Susie Lee, co-chairs, and Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz and Amelia Strong-Sykes, vice chairs. And Congresswoman De La Cruz was, oh, she's here. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure we gave her a shout out. She is not able to stay to speak, but we're so pleased she's here, and thank her for her commitment to this issue and so many other women's issues. Thank you. We are also pleased virtually to welcome Ambassador and former Congresswoman Connie Morella, a national leader on women in STEM and former chair of the technology subcommittee. She sponsored a number of STEM bills that became law. She also is one of our founding board members, so we are so pleased she joined us. And I should note that we also have a number of partners and friends in this audience. I want to say we have sort of a STEM fan base because of the number of events we've done. And we welcome all of you, and so happy that you all remain committed as well to this issue. We will be posting live on social media during the briefing, and we encourage you and others to do so by using the hashtag WCPISTEM 2024. And with that, I'm really pleased to introduce Congresswoman Amelia Sykes, Democratic Vice Chair of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus. She represents Ohio's 13th district and is serving her first term. She serves on, appropriately for this topic, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee and the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, both STEM committees. And last October, she launched the Girls in STEAM initiative to further inspire girls to pursue and enter the STEAM workforce. Congressman Sykes.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Cindy, for the introduction, and so glad to see so many faces here today to talk about a really fun and important topic, which is women in STEM. As Cindy mentioned, Amelia Sykes, I am the Congresswoman for Ohio's 13th Congressional District in Northeastern Ohio, and I'm also honored to serve as the Vice Chair of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus alongside my colleagues Kat Camille from Florida, Susie Lee from Las Vegas, Nevada. She's actually from my district, or born and raised, so it's kind of hard for me to let her go back to Nevada. And then also Monica De La Cruz, who just stepped out. I also want to say thank you to our panelists today, Camille, Marlon, and Alexis. Thank you for not only spending your time here, but being leaders in this field and uplifting the necessary and needed representation. As a member of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, one of the concerns that we hear quite a bit is the missing million. And I don't know how familiar you all are with that term, but it is the million Americans who are and have been excluded from STEM fields due to not lack of talent, but lack of opportunity. And this, of course, includes girls and women, but also people from economic disadvantaged backgrounds, from rural areas. And it is not possible for us to meet the national security and workforce needs without tapping into this potential and talent and providing the opportunity pathways for them to be successful. And so with my committee assignments, we are dedicated, not only in my office, but as members of the committee, to encouraging and uplifting how we can find the missing million. And one piece of legislation that I refer to all the time is the CHIPS and Science Act. And while a lot of people like to just refer it to the CHIPS Act, especially in Ohio, because we're talking about semiconductors, but it is the CHIPS and Science Act. And the science part of the CHIPS and Science Act allows us to invest in programs and education to pull the missing million, provide those pathways, and ensure that the workforce and our national security needs are met, and we're engaging with underrepresented communities. That is one of the reasons why we started in my district the Girls in STEAM program, to empower and support girls and young women to follow their passions and pursue careers in the STEAM fields. Now, notice I'm saying STEAM, not STEM. Because the A is incredibly important to include the arts. I'm a former dancer, and so it's very, very near and dear to me, but it's also important to get the left side and the right side of the brain working together, just like it's good to get the left side and the right side of our Congress working together, because then we get the best possible outcomes. So hopefully even through that, we can continue more bipartisanship and working together with all necessary partners. So through our Girls in STEAM program, we have connected young girls with successful local role models looking to work in the STEAM fields, and just like many of the speakers on the panel, and please don't be surprised if we call you and ask you for some help. And I'll just say very quickly that our first initiative program we did with NASA around the eclipse that is going to be going through Ohio, and preparing everyone for what's going to happen and connecting them to how girls and young women can be involved with STEM fields, excuse me. So we all know that representation matters, and you cannot be what you cannot see. Our doctors, engineers, scientists, technicians, and artists should look like us and reflect every corner of our communities. If we don't, we're missing a key perspective that's impactful for every segment of the population, and we will miss out on significant scientific and technological breakthroughs that could change our world for the better. Again, being an Ohioan, I have 1,000 examples, but we've all seen the movie Hidden Figures. We all know Neil Armstrong from Ohio was only able to make that orbit because of Black women. And so it is a great way, again, for us to all be involved, and especially as an Ohioan, to make those real life connections and then send people to a really fun movie to watch as well. That's also encouraging. So I am pleased to see that the CHIPS and Science Act includes several provisions that will ensure equitable access and economic growth for all communities. This, for example, includes the regional tech hubs that we just announced in the city of Akron, my hometown, around polymer science and polymer technology. The mayor of our city was recently sworn in, and he said he's still been trying to figure out what a polymer is. As many people do, but polymers are literally every single thing that you touch. If you got a chip bag in your hand, you're sitting on a chair, you're navigating a polymer. So be a little bit more ahead than our mayor in understanding what a polymer is, but know that the city of Akron helped provide the technology for those, and it's very important for our areas. So with these tech hubs and all of this investment from the administration, we are encouraging more innovation, finding pathways, and encouraging more people to be involved. And of course, that includes women and girls who have historically not been represented, but have found lots of ways to be significant and important contributors to this field. So I thank you all again for being here. I again want to thank our panelists. We appreciate you and all the work that you're doing and that you will continue to do to include that there is representation. And please count the Bipartisan Women's Caucus as well as my office as a partner in the work. Thank you all and have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sykes. She always manages to pack so much into, and still stay brief. And that is a talent that we don't see all the time around here. And we thank you for your leadership on this issue. It's very clear. I'm very happy next to start with our panel. We are expecting another member or two, and we may fit them within, in between the panelists. And so I'm going to just go ahead and introduce Camille Chang Gilmore. I'm not going to do the stats. Discussion right before, and I'm a little confused by my remarks. She is Vice President of Human Resources and Global Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for medical device and healthcare firm Boston Scientific Corporation. She also is the incoming chair of the Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM Foundation, which is the philanthropic arm of the world's largest HR professional society. Before joining Boston Scientific in 2004, Camille held HR roles at Federal Express, Exxon, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, IBM, and the state of Oregon. She hasn't done much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cindy, for this warm introduction. I so appreciate it. And Congresswoman Sykes, thanks so much for an amazing opening. It's a pleasure to be on panel today with Marlon and Alexis. And as I start, I'll say good afternoon. I am Camille Chang Gilmore, Vice President of Human Resources and Global Chief Diversity Officer for Boston Scientific. And as a medical technology leader for more than 4 decades, Boston Scientific advances science for life by performing and creating high-performance solutions that address unmet patient needs. Our work centers around our core values: caring, diversity, global collaboration, high performance, meaningful innovation, and winning spirit. Plus, we recently adopted a shared set of values and behaviors that live like daring to try and delivering what matters. My role, I am so humbled and privileged to lead 3 teams within Boston Scientific: our Close the Gap, which is our health equity initiative, diversity, equity, inclusion, and community engagement. We show up every day to help create a world where no one is left behind and every perspective matters and communities thrive. We put our patients, employees, and communities at the center of everything we do. And this work is what makes me, SHRM, and the SHRM Foundation such a good fit. I'm so proud to be the incoming board chair for the SHRM Foundation, a nonprofit since 1966 that has been a catalyst for creating workplaces where people and businesses prosper together. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the challenges. That's why we're here, to address the challenges faced by women in science, technology, engineering, careers. And one of the things that I know is that we want to bridge this divide driven by our values. But first, let's take a closer look at some of the stats. Despite making up nearly half of the US workforce, women are still vastly underrepresented in the STEM field. More specifically, according to the US Census Bureau, women are nearly half of the US workforce, but only 27% of STEM workers. The lack of representation is even more pronounced for women and people of color. Why is this? I think there's 4 reasons. 1, gender bias. Women encounter stereotypes and biases that undermine their abilities and contributions in STEM fields. The second, underrepresentation. Women are often underrepresented in leadership positions and face challenges in gaining equal opportunities for advancement. Third, life-work integration. And I call it life-work integration because no one told me about balance ever in my career, and I've never had it. Balancing and integrating career demands with family responsibilities can be particularly challenging for women in STEM, leading to issues such as the leaky pipeline that many of you have probably heard about when women leave STEM fields for higher rates than men. And then lastly, the lack of role models and mentorship. Limited visibility of female role models and mentors in STEM can make it difficult for women to envision themselves succeeding in these fields. They need to see people that look like themselves in order to believe that it's possible. So what can we do about it? What are some of the recommended solutions? Some challenges persist, but increasing awareness is so important. So I'm going to highlight 4 that I think we need to focus on. Increased awareness. There is a growing recognition for the importance of diversity and inclusion in STEM fields, leading to initiatives aimed at addressing gender disparities and biases. Second, advocacy and support. Organizations, institutions, and advocacy groups are working to create supportive environments, provide mentorship opportunities, and advocate for policies that promote gender equality in STEM. Community is so, so important to retaining talent. When a community diminishes in sizes, it burdens. The burden just gets so much larger for everyone. We think community, both inside and outside of Boston Scientific, is going to be the key to success. Education and outreach efforts encourage our girls and young women to pursue STEM education and careers and allow them to gain momentum, help them to address that gender gap from that early age. Visible role models. More women are achieving success and visibility in STEM fields, serving as role models and mentors for the next generation of female scientists and technology, engineers, and mathematicians. For example, at Boston Scientific, our internal Society of Women Engineers group has created a sense of community that provides support for women to be authentic and give them access to the broader network, fostering their growth and development. At Boston Scientific, we're taking steps to create clear pathways for advancement from people leader to those technical roles, and particularly identifying clear paths for obtaining fellow engineer roles. And the SHRM Foundation, we do specific actions around champion skills-first hiring. We look at valuing expertise over traditional credentials, which opens up doors for women with diverse backgrounds and experiences in STEM fields. Within the SHRM Foundation, we tackle workplace mental health. Mental health is so key. A barrier for women in STEM. For instance, expectations are higher for women of color, and guess what? Can be so exhausting. Overassignment of activities can pull people away from their technical work and diminish their careers for advancement. Promote diversity and growth within HR. Within the SHRM Foundation, we're teaching HR professionals to equip professionals to be champion for women in STEM. And some things I'd like to just add that I think we need to address on a personal note is addressing the bias and microaggressions that exist. Raise awareness about unconscious bias and the microaggressions that affect women daily, particularly women of color in the workplace. Implement strategies to mitigate bias and create more equitable environment for all employees. And the last one, like I said, there's no balance. Life-work integration. Offer flexible work arrangements, parental leave policies that work, and support services to help employees balance their professional and personal responsibilities, recognize and accommodate diverse needs and circumstances, collect the data, use the data, embrace the data. And in closing, I say there is a light. There is a positive light. And I would say to the young women exploring STEM today, embrace your curiosity, your passion for STEM. Your contributions to these fields are going to be so invaluable. And remember, you have the personal power to shape the future and inspire others. Don't be afraid to challenge the boundaries, to push and pursue your dreams with determination. Your journey in STEM is filled with endless possibilities for growth and innovation. Believe in yourself, stay resilient, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille. That was a terrific setup for our other speakers. We really appreciate all that you are doing. Your 2 hats, which you did a very good representation of both SHRM Foundation and Boston Scientific, and a real call to action. So thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Marlene Martez, Senior Technical Business Developer for Amazon Web Services, a division of Amazon. Prior to her role at Amazon, Marlene worked with the Department of Energy's Office of Technology Transitions, where she was responsible for the curation and execution of the Innovation X Lab Summit Series, a series of events connecting over 1,200 energy industry leaders. Marlene, closer to home, was a STEM fellow with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, where she worked with the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology and the U.S. Green Buildings Council. Marlene?
Hard to live up to Camille's remarks, but good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marlene Martez, and it is with great pleasure that I'm here today to share my story. Just 7 or so years ago, I remember walking the halls of this building while I was a fellow with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, or CHCI, completing my internship at the House Committee of Science, Space, and Technology. At the time, like many of the staffers in this room, I would aid in drafting briefing outlines and reach out to speakers to testify at congressional hearings. It is still a bit surreal being here and addressing you now, not as a staffer, but as a speaker representing an amazing company like Amazon. My career and journey into tech has been anything but traditional. In fact, I can proudly say that I have probably followed one of the least traditional paths oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing a page. Excuse me. Okay. One of the least traditional paths to tech, especially in relation to the field of network engineering. If I can briefly paint a picture, imagine being born and raised in the Bronx, New York, to an immigrant family from the Dominican Republic. Yes, my house was always loud, and my mother was rarely home, working long shifts at a restaurant to make ends meet. My brother and I had no friends or family in the tech industry to open doors for us, but what we did have was a mother who was not only determined that I make excellent grades, but also one that instilled the faith that I could accomplish anything I set my mind to. I was lucky enough to have the support of educators that identified I was talented in science and math from an early age and placed me in honors classes in public school all the way through high school. This same talent earned me a full ride from C-STEP at Fordham University, where I studied environmental policy with a focus on sustainable design. Eventually, after I completed undergrad, my brother nagged me enough to apply for a fellowship with CHCI, and I listened. To my surprise, I was accepted as a STEM fellow and received a stipend to relocate to DC and have the opportunity to work on the Hill and learn firsthand about the policy development process. My stint on the Hill was eye-opening, to say the least. It was my first time living on my own, and for me, shifting gears from the fast-paced rhythm of New York City to the tailored and very structured environment of Capitol Hill took a bit of adjustment. Nonetheless, it was a wonderful experience, and while I missed home and the great pizza in New York, at the conclusion of my fellowship, I was able to interview for a position as a special assistant for the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Technology Transitions. I was brought on as a federal contractor and helped develop programming and a series of meetings to help commercialize energy technologies out of the national laboratories the DOE oversees. This is where I learned about intellectual property, or in short form, IP. After 3 years at the DOE, I knew that I had to pursue a change to keep growing professionally. And so I applied for a Master's of Science program in Strategic Marketing and Communications. This must have spurred some air of good luck when around the same time, I also came across the job description of IP Acquisition Specialist at AWS. I thought, wow, this is the perfect position to apply for. I had been working on licensing IP all that time at the DOE, but little did I know that IP at AWS didn't mean intellectual property. It meant internet protocol. As you can imagine, I was surprised when I received my first call from a recruiter asking if I had any knowledge about IP before and the internet. Was I honest? Yes. Did I also complete the fastest internet search known to mankind? Yes. I said I knew enough to know about IP addresses and how devices connected to networks, and diverted quickly to highlighting my skill set and what I brought to the table, like discussing my people skills and my ability to talk to a variety of groups eloquently, and how I had prepared some of the most brilliant and most socially awkward scientists I'd ever meet to present to the private sector. This was enough to earn me an interview. I researched and studied as much as possible for the infamously long interview at Amazon. Today, almost 4 years later, I am not only still employed, I am thriving. My first year was definitely the most difficult, as I had a deep learning curve and I was enrolled in night classes for my master's degree. However, since then, I've gone through 2 promotions and a title change. I sit on 2 committees for the North American Network Operators Group. I just ran for the board of directors. I am also a board member for the DMV chapter of the Latinos at Amazon Affinity Group. To top it all off, I also welcome my second child in all this process, and I'm a mother of 2. While it has not been easy to accomplish what I have most certainly been lucky to not only have my family as my rock, but also 2 fabulous women as my managers at Amazon that are my #1 fans. My managers have not only encouraged me to pursue professional development opportunities, yet they have also invested their time to mentor and advocate for me when I am not in the room. That is the brilliant thing about being an Amazonian. The culture of respect and inclusion that is woven into Amazon's 16 leadership principles remind team members to seek diverse perspectives, learn and be curious, and earn trust. Leaders at Amazon are challenged with the tough questions. Are my fellow employees growing? Are they empowered? Are they ready for what's next? This should be universal. Regardless of where your employee is from or how they identify, are you empowering them? Ultimately, the best thing we can do for each other, especially as women, is to advocate for other women and help them build the confidence to advocate for themselves, regardless of who is in the room or not. Secondly, we need to find ways to build the technical skill set for women to build that bridge into a career into tech. At Amazon, we've increased the number of women in L8 positions in STEM-focused roles by 66%. This means director roles. We have reached 1.9 million students in the US and 3.2 million globally through the Amazon Future Engineer program. This program aims to increase access to STEM education for students from underrepresented communities and is currently available in the US, the UK, France, Canada, India, and Germany. We also continue investing in our existing upskilling programs, such as our Global Mentorship Program, which creates more than 6,000 mentorship opportunities every year, and the Amazon Technical Academy, which trains non-technical employees to transition into software engineering careers. When we have conversations like the one we will have today, we create blueprints for government and the private sector to follow. There are most definitely ways to bridge the tech gap for women, even in non-traditional ways. So, was my path traditional? No. But has it been fun and unique? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlene. What an inspiring story. And I think everyone in the audience probably is feeling your energy and excitement. So thank you so much for everything you're doing, not just your own path, but for other girls and women thinking about careers in STEM. I'm pleased to welcome our final speaker, Dr. Alexis McKittrick, who is president of the Society of Women Engineers, or SWE, the largest advocacy organization for women in engineering. And she will be speaking in her capacity with SWE, but I am going to give a little background. A PhD chemical engineer, Dr. McKittrick is a program manager in the Department of Energy, DOE, Geothermal Technologies Office. Both have worked at DOE. Before joining DOE, she was a senior researcher at the IDA Science and Technology Policy Institute, where she conducted nonpartisan research and analysis for the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and other federal agencies, and also worked for the Environmental Protection Agency. So another impressive background. I'm excited to have you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm very excited to round out our panel today. I wanted to say a quick thank you to the Women's Congressional Policy Institute and the Bipartisan Women's Caucus for hosting this event today and for having us to talk about a really important issue that I'm sure you will not be surprised to hear, is absolutely at the core of the Society of Women Engineers, or SWE's, mission. I want to start with a little framing on the big picture here. There's been a lot of positivity today, and I think that there's a lot of reason for optimism. However, the reality for women in engineering is that despite years, and I would argue even decades of effort focused on underrepresentation of women and people of color in engineering, there has not been a significant increase in women in technology and engineering fields. For the United States to continue to be a competitive global leader, we need to embrace pathways to increase the number of engineers, and that means ensuring that women of all backgrounds are able to pursue and persist, thinking about that leaky pipeline, persist in an engineering career. Society of Women Engineers is a professional membership organization. We have over 45,000 members across the globe. And we support a diverse set of strategies to addressing women and girls in engineering and the barriers that they face. From K-12 to college to professionals, SWE is dedicated to supporting women and girls' pathways to engineering and technology and closing the STEM gap. So let's talk about a little bit of stats. We promised some stats. Women are, again, underrepresented, as I mentioned a minute ago, earning only 13% of degrees in engineering fields today. And women of color face even greater underrepresentation. As of 2020, less than 8% of engineering bachelor degrees were earned by women of color, which includes Black, Hispanic, Native American, and Asian women. 8%. For those who do earn engineering degrees, they go into the professional world and face some barriers, as my fellow panelists have talked through. One of those is the pay gap for underrepresented groups. According to the Pew Research Center, the median annual earnings for women in STEM jobs is 74% of men's earnings. And Black and Hispanic women earn 63% of white men's salaries in STEM. That's a pretty big gap. And research shows, again, thinking about that leaky pipeline, that women are leaving STEM fields mid-career at much higher rates than their male counterparts. For example, 51% of men with a STEM bachelor's degree are working in STEM, 51% of men mid-career in a STEM occupation continue, whereas only 29% of white women, 26% of Hispanic women, and 21% of Black women are still in engineering or technology mid-career. And then regarding work satisfaction, 65% of women versus 85% of white men report having access to desirable assignments at work. So this is getting to when you're in your engineering job and in your technology job, are you getting the assignments that are of interest to you? And unfortunately, only 55% of engineers of color report having desirable work assignments. These are just a couple examples of the barriers and hurdles that women and underrepresented groups in engineering and technology are facing. I encourage you to visit research.swe.org if you're interested in learning more about the barriers I just mentioned or others that I don't have time to go into today. All right, so that was the hard part. That's the barriers, that's the challenges. So what is SWE doing to help combat some of these barriers? What are we doing to help pave those pathways for women in engineering and technology? First, I'd like to mention our SWE Next program. This is a free program that is available to students age 5 to 18. So we're in that K-12 set right now. And it's focused on making sure that these folks have access to tools to increase their understanding of engineering, the engineering field, a great way to establish engagement in engineering, providing that dynamic opportunity for SWE Nexters to learn, connect with peers, and witness women engineers in action. We have over 280 of these clubs, over 5,000 SWE Nexters right now. We're hoping obviously to continue to grow that. I personally have 2 SWE-Nexters at home, 11 and 14. And I can say firsthand the impact that these resources have when they're able to see the role models of women in engineering. See her and be her. SWE is also creating and sustaining support networks of women in engineering and technology throughout folks' careers, from college to professionals and beyond. We have hundreds of collegiate and professional sections all over the US and the globe, and over 20 affinity groups that allow different women in engineering and technology to affiliate and connect in the ways that they find meaningful across the globe. We also have countless employee resource groups with many of our partner organizations, including Boston Scientific. Appreciate that shout out, Camille. And that's really helping foster professional development within the companies that are going to drive the innovation engine of the United States. I personally had the opportunity to take advantage of these resources. I recall the cold water, to be honest, that got dumped on my head when I came from finishing my graduate degree at Georgia Tech. Any Ramblin' Rex? Anybody? All right, online though, I'm sure. Finishing at Georgia Tech, which by just about any metric is one of the most diverse campuses for engineers in the US. And moving into industry R&D, being the only woman in the room, being someone that was trying to find their voice, right, in a very different environment where I didn't feel like I saw others that looked like me and that shared my personal values. And SWE was the organization that was that network for me, was that support structure for me, and helped me find my voice through my local professional section. And as I continued in my career, had the opportunity to network in a lot of different ways that also allowed me to help others find their voice and be that support structure for each other. SWE is also helping women through other barriers as well, including financial ones, financial support. Let's talk about scholarships. In 2023, SWE distributed over 330 scholarships valued at more than $1.5 million. This is everything from incoming freshmen all the way through to graduate students. And I'm truly excited to mention a program that is only a few years old, but stands to make an outsized impact in supporting women of color in engineering and technology. And that is the Women of Color in Engineering Collaborative, or WCEC. Established in 2021, the WCEC includes 29 different STEM-focused partner organizations. They're committed to ensuring more diverse and inclusive engineering workforce. And this collective group of 29 organizations is going to be providing organizations with resources to create a supportive, encouraging, and inclusive environment to recruit and retain women of color in engineering and technology. And I'm excited to announce that in late 2023, this organization received a $5 million grant from the National Science Foundation, which will allow them to continue their work. And finally, I'll close with a little bit of a call to action, just because I know we have so many folks who work with policymakers and decision makers on the Hill with us today. SWE is excited to provide strong support for the STEM Restart Act. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill that provides small and medium-sized businesses with funding to robust paid mid-career internships, also known as returnships. Returnships are where folks have a career break in their engineering or technology career for a variety of reasons, and they're able to come back into the workforce as a unique pipeline, unique pathway that can help us close the STEM gap and bring more women and men back into engineering after they've had a career break. Also, in the ongoing appropriations process, we support adequate investments to programs that support early and repeated exposure to STEM subjects in K through 12. You heard me talk about SWE-Next, talking about more funding for Department of Education, NSF, and other organizations that can help support that K through 12 pipeline. And then, of course, we support additional investments in historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, tribal colleges and universities, and other minority-serving institutions that can help these schools strengthen their STEM and research programs. Really, this is us encouraging folks to help us create more pathways for minorities in engineering, people of color, women, to enhance these pathways and enable more folks to get into engineering and technology. SWE is, as you heard from me, working every day to close the STEM gap. And we're excited to take part in today's briefing, but it will take all of us working together, all of our organizations, all of our government working together in order to help make sure that we can make these closing the STEM gap a reality and are creating more and different pathways. So looking forward to continue to partnering with many of you in the room and hoping to welcome new partners in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alexis. It was great to hear about all the programs SWE is doing. I was aware of some of them. I was not aware that there were quite so many.
Every day.
And definitely starting in kindergarten is a good place to start. So we're going to, this is something that we experience from time to time with these briefings. So many of our women speakers, not to be, anti-male in any way, shape, or form, tend to be briefer. And we are starting Q&A earlier than I would have anticipated, which is a good thing. So we have plenty of time for questions. And we would ask, we have a floating mic. Okay, our Tatum Thatcher, intern, is going to be floating it around. And please give us your name, your affiliation before asking your question, and we will go ahead and get started. We have a gentleman in the back of the room.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Todd Wiggins, and I'm a video production specialist here in the district under meetmedmv.com. So my question is probably going to be one that everyone in the room is going to think they have an answer to. But I'm naive enough to believe that if you manage to make it through college and you get a degree and you apply for a job that you are clearly qualified for, you have the experience and you have the resume and you have the degree, that no one can look at you in any HR department in the country and say, because you're a man, we're not going to pay you as much. So what does that mean these days, and how does the EEOC handle these kinds of, let's say, overt situations where there might be discrimination based on gender?
Anybody want to jump in?
So I'll put my HR hat on.
Yeah.
Okay. And a couple of things that jumped out at me as you were talking was, first, women, they go through school, they believe they can they can be just as successful as a male counterpart, but yet either probably get a lower level job or get paid at a lower rate. And sometimes I feel that some of the women don't even know that they can even negotiate at a higher rate, just even based on their qualifications. I coach a few young ladies at Boston Scientific, and many of them suffer from what I call imposter syndrome, where they don't even believe that they're even warranted to ask for certain things or even demand certain things, or even be in the room to provide certain expertise. And one of the things that I have often had to tell them is that, one, you can demand and you can negotiate, you can ask questions. And I think one of the things that it's often important to do is when they are offered a position or they are offered a salary, they should do a little research and see what the range is and offer up a counter, but they don't know how to do that, or don't feel comfortable in doing that. But one of the things I don't know about the OFCCP piece of it, but I do know within Boston Scientific, one of the things that we try and do is pay fair market value for credentials and skills. And one of the things that we even do as a company is if we believe that someone has come into the organization at a lower quote compa ratio, we actually do our own audit internally and tell supervisors, tell managers, hey, this person is at a lower rate, at a lower pay scale. They should be at this compa ratio compared to market. We would suggest that you bring them up. Unless you can tell us that there's a performance issue, we expect there to be an adjustment based on their performance to at least make them competitive with the other peers within our organization. So I know as a company, we take personal accountability to make sure that women within our organization are paid fairly. And I believe if I look at our last performance report, we were at 99% pay equity for women. Yeah, we actually look at market, at positions, and we look at our competitors and what they're paying a person to market. And then we come back and say, okay, this is where the average is. And if we believe when we do our scan that we have employees who are not paid at the average, our comp team goes and has conversations with managers to say, you need to, unless there's a performance issue that's hindering this person's ability to get paid at market, you should make the adjustments.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add, is the mic on? Okay, thank you so much. Is in addition to that really great metric-based pay review, is addressing the unconscious bias that we all have within our organizations. It is called unconscious bias for a reason. Folks are not aware of it, not recognizing that when they are evaluating employees, they might have an internal bias for different diversity characteristics, might have a bias for people who look and act like them. And that is why training is so important across all organizations. Training on unconscious bias, how to identify it within yourself, because we all have it. I have it, you have it, everyone in this room has unconscious bias of some kind. And also training around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how to create work environments that are inclusive and equitable for everyone that's part of your company or your organization. So that's the one thing I would add that is less on the onus of the person holding the position and more on the company or organization to make sure that they are including.
Yeah, thank you, Camille and Alexis. Just piggyback off of your remarks, focusing back on the interviewee or the applicant, the candidate, there are a number of tools and resources available just online before you go into an interview that you should do like thorough research before you walk in and meet with a potential employer. I always look at Glassdoor. LinkedIn also has a couple of reports where they give you median salary range for the specific title that you're interviewing for or applying for. That's always good. And I'll say, just like as a tidbit of advice, if you feel at any point that you have been singled out or that someone has been biased against you, why would you want to work for that organization? Like, just if they're lowballing you, then your job is to get them to try to match you or walk away and find a better offer. At the end of the day, it's not so much what they can give to you, it's the value that you're bringing to their organization that needs to be valued. So
these are all excellent answers. We did several series on the wage gap some years ago, and all of these issues came up. And I think pay transparency has greatly increased and expanded, and negotiating skills among young women have also greatly improved.
Yeah.
I'm very happy. We now have another woman member joining us, and it's Congresswoman Marionette Miller Meeks, who represents the 1st District of Iowa. She serves on the Energy and Commerce Committee and Agriculture Committee and is co-chair of the Public School Caucus, that held an event to discuss the importance of STEM excellence in K-12 classrooms recently. And she has been very outspoken on these issues, and we're thrilled she's joined us. So Congresswoman, we'd love to have you. Want to come up to the podium? Probably better for the visual for our Zoom audience.
Probably not better for the visual, because you won't see me over the podium. So. So I'll just speak from here.
Will they be able to see her? Yes.
I think so. Or do you need me in your camera view?
Sure.
Thank you all very much. It's delightful to be here with you. First, let me say that I'm not on the agricultural committee, even though Iowa has 25% of its GDP from ag. I am on energy and commerce, of which I sit on the health sub and the environment, manufacturing, critical mineral sub. I'm also the chair of the health sub on the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. And then I'm on the select subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic. And then I'm the co-chair of the Conservative Climate Caucus, as well as a variety of other caucuses. So first and foremost, let me just say my foray into where I am today and my background is a little bit unusual. So I am the fourth of 8 kids. My father was enlisted in the Air Force. We traveled around a lot. My mom had a GED. No one in my family had a college education. And when I was 15, I was burned in a kitchen fire and decided that I wanted to become a doctor. At that point in time, no one in my family had ever been to college. And my parents were a little bit dismissive. And when you're 15, you think when your parents don't agree with something you're doing, that it's because they don't have faith or confidence or trust in you. That's what you think as a 15-year-old, whereas your parents are thinking, how are we going to get a kid through undergraduate, much less medical school, when no one in the family's been to college, and how are we going to pay for it? So I did the normal 15-year-old thing, and I rebelled. And so that meant I went out, left home at 16, got a job, enrolled in San Antonio Junior College, never graduated high school. I started at college, decided if I got a degree in nursing, I could work at night to put myself through medical school. So I did 2 years in community college, enlisted in the Army when I was 18, got a degree in nursing, became an officer in the military, got a master's in education. Ultimately, they felt sorry for me and let me in medical school. At the old age of 26, I had done all that by the time I was 26 and was financially independent throughout all of this time. Without mentoring, without push, it was a personal commitment and desire. And then along the way, when you have that intensity, you meet people who gravitate to you and want to help you. And so there are people along my pathway that were very instrumental in helping me to get into medical school by arranging my hours when I was a nurse at Fort Hood, so I could drive 70 miles one way to take a physics course, so I'd have the courses I needed to get in med school. Or by my organic chemistry instructor letting me know that with these scores on your MCAT, you're not going to get in, so let's do some other things to help prepare you. So just that intensity and that passion draws people to you. Didn't plan to be in Congress, never thought I would be in Congress, but along the way have certainly wanted to encourage young women. And now I'm going to say something controversial, that we should also be encouraging young men in STEM. Now, why do I say controversial? So as I did academic medicine, I was on faculty at the University of Michigan, the University of Iowa. I went into private practice. I've done military medicine. And when I was in my private practice in a small town in Iowa, my kids were going through school, and I wanted more women involved in sciences. And so I went to our local meat processing facility, and I got pig's eyes and pig's hearts. And I talked to our 6th grade science instructors if I could do a class. And so for 5 years, I would take time off of my job, my work. I would get x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, pig eyes and pig's hearts donated to me, all the supplies I needed, and I would do a class for 2 hours for students. And in 5 years, I only had one girl who refused to dissect an eye or a heart. You were able to move them out of the emotional and into the possible. Now, why did I do that? It was just to get people thinking about science and the opportunities science had, whether it was in medicine, whether it's in technology. There's So vast. Now, why did I say the controversial thing? This is a women's policy institute, and I get that. And that's because when I went to medical school, there was less than 20% of our class was female. No one was in very few people were in medical school that had had an alternate career. As a matter of fact, I can remember interviewing for residencies and being told I wouldn't succeed because I was a nurse before I was a doctor. I already had a career pathway. And so I'd give up. Well, I, of course, have never given up. I'm still there. And now I'm here in Congress. But why I say that is now medical school classes are 50% female or more. What are the graduates from college? Mostly women. So as we encourage young women, let's not forget to also encourage and support young men, because young men will help support young women. Not that we need their support. I've been financially independent since I was 16 years old. I've never had a joint checking account. I don't recommend you do that. But my point to make it to you is, as an independent woman, I'm saying we need to do both, because that collaboration between individuals, between school kids, in the playground, in the science class, on a sports field, that collaboration will incent and motivate and encourage and delight. It should be the quest to explore, the desire to find a solution. And that's what's so cool about STEM to me, is that it's finding solutions to problems we all face. And where there's a will, there's a way. So whether we have a science class, whether we bring some along, taking your daughter to work, touring a facility, all of those things in minor ways can help to generate a passion for science, for technology, for engineering, which we need vastly more of in the United States. And then that impacts the world as we export those ambassadors in STEM throughout the world. So thank you so much.
That was terrific. We really appreciate that. I had no idea that you had such a rich experience. And we've had some other non-traditional paths by prior speakers. So thank you so much. We love what you're doing and appreciate your commitment. And yes, we are certainly not trying to discourage males, particularly in the health sciences, where there is much more of a, it's much closer in terms of numbers. Engineering, not so much. We have somebody from USPTO here. Patents, definitely not so much. We did a briefing on patents and women 2 or 3 years ago, and it's still a long way to go. But thank you so much, Congresswoman. And we will go back to questions. And again, Tatum's got the mic, so.
Hi, my name is Jeanette Parker. I'm from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Is this my phone? So we offer a lot of programming to promote women in STEM and small businesses and minorities and such. We do a lot of community outreach to encourage, especially girls in science and stuff. So what has your experience like, and this is my personal questions, not from the agency, what has your experience been like working with some of the outreach programs from the federal government agency?
I will say from SWE's perspective, we have interacted with federal government most often from an outreach perspective in applying for things like the NSF Advance, and again, the NSF grants that have led to the Women of Color in Engineering Collaborative that I mentioned. So that has really been part of the federal government that has enabled a lot of the work and the new pathways, right, that we're looking at and we're trying to seek. I would say also a little aside from your question on federal agencies, but I would say that we do host a Congressional Visits Day, as many organizations do every year in March, and have the opportunity to advocate for not only federal funding, but specific pieces of legislation like the STEM Restart Act that we're hoping will be able to be passed in Congress. And those typically provide a lot of funding for not only federal agencies, but different initiatives. And I know we mentioned CHIPS and Science Act earlier as well. Those provide a good amount of funding that will support the things that SWE is doing and the pathways that we're looking to create within the US. So I think those are really critical pieces.
We actually do a lot more with nonprofits, more than federal agencies. So we have a big partnership with Girls Inc. And really try and make sure that, to your point, Alexis, that you see her, you be her. And we start by doing externships, like bringing them in for a day and allowing them to come into some of our largest facilities and touch the models and really think about what is possible, right? But go in a day in the life of and interact with people on the floor, our engineers, and really get exposed to our interns and our young professionals network. We have employee resource groups at Boston Scientific. We have about 10, and exposing them to those constituency groups so that they can see what a day in the life is like at a med device company is really, really important. But we do more with our nonprofits.
Yeah, I can't really talk to the government piece of that. However, Amazon does have what we call affinity groups, and I believe we have about 13 different groups focused on a variety of different interests. And these are essentially employee resource groups that do go into the communities and sometimes give grants or give scholarships or work with specific STEM related organizations. Just in the DMV Latinos Affinity Group that I'm a part of, we work with Latinas Leading Tomorrow, which is a mentorship program that not only pairs middle school and high school girls with a female mentor, but they also established some of those day in the life programs. They have guest speakers from the private sector, from government, from labs actually going in and doing experiments and talking about technology, essentially working ways to fill those gaps. So Amazon is involved in a variety of different ways in community development.
Hi, thank you guys so much for being here. I just want to say that first. My name's Contessa. I'm from Congresswoman Elise Stefanik's office. And Dr. McKittrick, I really like how you brought up a solution being, introducing STEM at an earlier age in education. And I was wondering, what does that look like? Because we work a lot with education and I'm really interested in that subject. And Ms. Martes, you also said, you had teachers who were encouraging you when you were younger, and that really helped with your career. And I also really liked what the Congresswoman said, she was bringing in things to dissect for the students. Like what can these kind of things look like for students in like first, second grade, and what can Congress do to help that?
Great question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. You brought up so many good topics. One of the things that we do when we do bring young people in to Boston Scientific, we actually help them create and see how they can create an electronic toothbrush with a rubber band, a battery, a nickel, and a regular toothbrush. And it's fascinating for them to see. I think one of the things I know and I believe is that you are who you have the conversations with yourself. What are you saying to yourself? And I think one of the things that we try and teach these young people is you should see yourself as an engineer. I loved what Congresswoman said about engaging boys. My husband, who's here in the audience, Derek Gilmore, he and I have a nephew, and every time he comes to my home, I go, "There's my little engineer. There's my little engineer." And the other day, he said to his mom asked him, "So what do you want to be?" "Of course, an engineer." So you are what you say to yourself, you are what you put into the room, you are what you tell these young people they can be. And I think it's so important that we reinforce the fact that they can be anything. And so I loved what was said about engaging everyone and to think about the possibility.
Yeah, I can touch a little bit. So, my oldest son is 5 and my youngest is 1. But my 5-year-old is very much, and even my 1-year-old at the very young age that he is, they have a lot more access to technological devices than probably any other generation has ever had. So they have a lot more access to these other things where they can start picking up on coding and robotics and even like even if things that are non-technical or technical in that way, Legos are also a very good way to get like young men and women to really start thinking in another way to get your brain working differently. But what I found is really I guess transformative for I guess for me growing up and as I have progressed in my career and getting into those early K through 12 education cycles is mentorship programs. So while I was in undergrad at Fordham, I actually started my first mentorship, and that was called Club Amigas. It was a club where young college Latina women would be mentors to young women from immigrant families close to the campus, and we would bring them onto campus and talk to them about what we were learning about, and we would hear what they were going through, because one of the challenges for them was they didn't have devices to connect to do their homework. Their parents couldn't speak English, they couldn't speak the language, and they couldn't even get their math or English homework done, nonetheless science. So we would help them with their homework, we would do those type of things. So finding different plugs for these kids to get that exposure that maybe they're not getting at home, or if their school doesn't have resources, that's also a way to kind of like bring in like actual physical things for them to address that gap.
Yeah. Oh, I love all of these great points. This is a fantastic question. Thank you so much. I would say SWE thinks about this in a few different ways and making sure that we're engaging young women and girls in engineering and technology. First is kind of creating the opportunity, right, to learn. So it was just mentioned creating hands-on activity opportunities. We have a large activity with hundreds of girls at our annual conference called Invent It, Build It, where we bring in middle school and high school age young women to take part in hands-on engineering activities. And even in our SWE Next clubs, even virtually, like being able to participate in and learn a little bit more about engineering and technology. So creating that opportunity space. And then 2 is connecting with peers. So we've seen this a lot in the SWE Next clubs. It's actually folks really want that opportunity to see like, hey, there's another middle schooler, again, that looks like me, right, that is interested in engineering, who I can learn from. And she's like, oh, I learned this about robotics. So I learned this about chemistry. And that peer-to-peer connection, even at the middle school and high school level, we've seen is really critical. And then the final one for girls, I would say, is the See Her, Be Her, right? So we have a lot of like bios on our SWE Next resources, like a day in the life of chemical engineer, a day in the life of materials engineer, and so on, that folks can reference. And then we just have regular speaker sessions, right? So it's the virtual and the in-person, covering all of those. And the last point I want to make before we go on to the next question is just engaging with educators as well is a big piece of this, right? And making sure that the folks who are teaching, right, one, are having that unconscious bias training as well, and just knowing a little bit more about how to talk to folks who are interested in engineering and technology, how to best support them and provide resources and hands-on activities. Because what we don't want is to have someone who has that spark. Sorry, I'm only looking at one half of the room here. Has that spark and then doesn't have it nurtured, right? And so how can we kind of train the trainers, if you will, train the educators to make sure that they're nurturing that spark when they see it?
Yes. Excellent answers.
Mitch Taylor, SHRM. We share the commonality with the 1-year-old. My daughter's 1, and she will definitely grab a cell phone, especially if she sees a face on it, and she will hang up. Just one question I had is, I think, how do how do men do a better job, especially for those coming out into their careers or mid-career, at just the mentorship process? You know, establishing that relationship with women to help them along their journey and answer those questions and kind of restore, I think, the trust in the mentorship process.
That's a good one.
Go ahead.
No, that's a good one. You know, one of the things I guess in my household, we have all boys, but my husband and my husband will tell you oftentimes when young girls come to my home, I am championing them, but it's wonderful to see him championing them too, and speaking to them in a way that they know that they can do anything. And I think one of the things I'd love to see allies, I see men as allies do for young women is expose them to various work environments, coach them up when they see that they need to be coached, right? There are moments that I know that my male mentors, male allies would pull me aside in the moment rather than waiting to, for me to fall. And I think one of the things that you can do is truly champion a young woman to really get exposed to the sciences. I'll share with you one of the things that we do in my home is we sponsor scholarships, right? We feed the next generation, and I think it's our responsibility to do so. And if men could be allies not only in coaching but in also scholarships, I think that's the next wave to really allow the talent to blossom within the sciences.
I really appreciate this question so much because I don't think that there's a path where we succeed, right, in equity in engineering and technology without men, right? Men being, especially in engineering and technology, the majority for, especially when we're talking about white men, we cannot succeed without having the buy-in, the allyship, right, from that majority that is willing to widen the circle, make sure that everyone is included, be a sponsor, right, for women, for minorities in engineering, and help kind of bring those folks up. And I would add, and this is a really hard one, but a really important thing for allies is call out bias when you see it, address bias when you see it. Women and minorities, right? I think Camille, you mentioned it earlier, like we're kind of exhausted, right? It is a lot, and calling it out all the time is incredibly difficult to do and to maintain. And so having folks who are in that majority in STEM careers, but are willing to call out bias, call out microaggressions. We mentioned microaggressions earlier when they see it. That is an incredibly important part of allyship.
Yeah, for me, I think my first mentor was my brother. He was 7 years older than me, and just seeing his footsteps and having someone that I can kind of like bounce ideas from always has served as inspiration and a role model to me. So it doesn't have to be anything like formal where you're joining some group or, like really like being a good role model and a mentor for another woman like in your immediate circle could be the start. The other thing for me was, at least when I first jumped into the network engineering industry, I thankfully had some really good women that had already explored the industry before and can navigate me a little bit more. But getting into different like niche groups of like the tech field, and it took a lot. I had to earn the trust of a lot of men that would have been completely apprehensive and maybe seen me as a threat when I first came, being a young woman and being a young woman of color. So I had a few very much older men really come up to me and say, "Hey, do you want an introduction to this, or how can I help you?" So maybe seeing someone in the room that you've seen for the first time, a newcomer, and reaching out to them and just wanting to help, like that's the best way to do it. Asking, how can I help you? And not assuming, oh, like this is what you need.
I'd like to add just one more thing because it reminded me of a painting in my home called He Ain't Heavy. And it's a painting where the person is reaching down and pulling the other person up and choosing to pull someone up. And Brenda Becker, who's our SVP of Government Affairs, and I often talk about this, that it's our responsibility to go get the next person and pull them up. And I think that's one of the things that we have to think about. Who are we pulling up? Who are we choosing to reach down and say, I'm going to take a chance on her. I'm going to take a chance on him, and expose them to things that can just make them great. And to the point that Alexis made, you know, when we talk about bias, how many of you have a brain in here? How many of you have a brain? Right? If you have a brain, you have a bias.
This panel is terrific, aren't they? But I honestly, I completely agree with everything being said here. And fathers of daughters, I was very close to my late father. Really, that alone is hugely important. Siblings, and as everyone's saying, mentors of a lot of older men for me too made it such a difference in my career. Not a STEM career, but nevertheless, important point. One more question, and then we're going to go to the last question.
Thank you. I'm from Wounded Warrior Project, and women veterans, and especially those in the STEM fields, very important, major priority for us. So, you know, the military, is that, you know, I appreciate seeing everybody here from the civilian sector, but the military doesn't discriminate in regards to job placements. There's no restrictions for women anymore. And it seems like that would be a good pathway for a lot of individuals who are trying to access non-traditional paths in regards to navigating STEM fields and gaining also that real life experience in the process. But are there any elements of research that y'all are familiar with where we're looking to see if women in STEM fields are carrying on? I mean, you spoke about women leaving the STEM fields and mid-career and not coming back, but do we know if women who are coming from out of the military, are they staying in STEM fields, having that real life experience, the value that they could potentially add to the civilian workforce? Is anybody studying that? Is anybody talking about that?
Question. Yeah, it's a really good question, and one I will definitely take back to our research team. I do know that in SWE we've done a number of campaigns of research related to non-traditional pathways, but I would say that's focused more on kind of community college and trade organization or trade school pathways as opposed to military. But I will definitely take that back as a thought. I will say from a support structure perspective, one of our affinity groups is focused on military service and those who are in our membership core who have that that facet of diversity in common. And so there's one way that we're supporting, but we'll take that back. You're right, there's more we could do there.
It's a great question, and I'm going to take that back. We have a VETS ERG employee resource group, and I'd love to see them tackle that. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't speak to the research component, but if I can just tell you off of observation, my manager, Tina Morris, she was a veteran, and when she joined Amazon and she is, I want to say, kicking butt. And she opened a door for me and like at least 4 or 5 other women in the field, and was really has been such an inspiration. And I can think of 2 other women, one that was even in the Air Force, and she did leave the Air Force because she had to bear children, but she did stay and working in a telecommunications industry. I have seen, I feel a number of women in my industry with a veteran background, and they're actually much more respected than any other non-traditional path, to be honest.
We do an annual Women Veterans event, so we haven't decided our topic. I'm quite sure our VSO partners have at least looked at this, but it's a great question, and I haven't seen any statistics. I'm looking in the back at our staff, but I think it's an excellent question and really interesting topic. And I should also note that we have in the past done panels around women in skilled trades and other underrepresented groups within professions that do not require college degrees. And we are thinking about doing an event in the fall. I'm looking over at one of our partners, IBEW, that may be looking at that question too, and sort of what that is another very underrepresented area of well-paid work. So, and some of the companies here have those jobs and have done a good job too. My final question, everyone knows I'm going to ask this question. I ask it at every briefing. In 1 minute or less, please share your sort of most important primary takeaways for this policy audience.
If I were to just sum it up, I would say representation matters. People need to see themselves in order to understand that they can be that engineer, be that scientist, be that doctor. And I would say advocate and support. Who are you going to pull up? Who are you going to lift up? Who are you going to take a chance on and to bring them into a field that can unleash the possibilities?
So first, please pass the STEM Restart Act. I know it's the third time I mentioned it, but I'll throw it in here at the end as one of my two. And then the other is really, there's no shortage, right, of really great ideas that have come out of today, right, that you've heard from the panelists, that we've learned through questions from the audience, that we heard from our members who were able to come by. And, you know, my charge would be to get involved, right? So participate, pick one, start with one pathway that you heard, whether it was the K through 12, whether it was returnships, whether it was, you know, better male allyship, you know, pick something and start working, because it's going to take, as I mentioned during my remarks, all of us to close this STEM gap. And so I think the most important thing is to walk away from here and take action in whatever space resonated with you from today's briefing.
Yeah, I guess for me, my biggest lesson to myself was I had to really gain confidence and believe in myself enough to lose the fear, to challenge myself. In many ways, I always thought, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't apply for that. I'm just not qualified enough. No, forget it. What's the worst that can happen if you apply for something and they don't interview? You just don't get interviewed. So take that chance and take that leap whenever you can. And you know, you are your own worst enemy. But you're also your best friend, and you know yourself the best as well. So I'd say in any situation, highlight your skill set. Always highlight your skill set. Think about what you bring to the table, and also pay it forward and make it count, and whatever it is that you want to set yourself to.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for your inspiring presentations. We hope that this briefing has provided you with a better understanding of the unique experiences and challenges faced by women in STEM, and will serve as a resource for policymakers. This conversation was recorded and should be available for viewing on our website. I don't know, it's Thursday. I think next week we better say WCPNs.org. A short survey about today's discussion can be accessed through the QR codes you see around the room. There's one back there. We hope each of you will take some time to respond. We also encourage anyone attending remotely, you will be getting the survey momentarily as soon as this event ends. So we hope you will also do that. Our thanks again to the Bipartisan Women's Caucus, to the women members that spoke, and also the leadership and their staff, always our partners, and to Amazon for their support for this briefing. We so appreciate your partnership. And finally, last but not least, my thanks to the WCPI team. Alyssa Ennis, our policy director, today is her birthday. Ifnan Adam, Annabelle Green, Tatum Tatch, Tharunika Govindasamy, and Tanvi Prasad. Thank you all. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Oh.